Thanks for joining us on the show, everyone. We begin today with the kind of story that makes you question everything from safety to power, privilege, and accountability. The Abuja airport incident involving Fuji musician KWAM and ValueJet Airlines has raised far more than eyebrows. It's raised alarm bells about aviation safety, impunity, and whether the rule of law still applies in Nigeria's airspace. So what exactly happened on the tarmac of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport when the musician found himself face-to-face with a taxiing aircraft? Was it simply a lapse in protocol or a reckless abuse of influence? In the words of the Minister of Aviation, Festus Keyamo, he said, "This was obviously a case of temporary loss of sanity and control on both sides, which could have led to serious fatalities." The NCAA has now placed Wasiu Ayinde on a 6-month no-fly list and suspended the licenses of the pilots involved. But the video evidence, conflicting accounts, and lingering public questions is a big one for all of us as we begin to ask questions whether or not we have seen or we all do know the full story. Let's bring in someone who should know. Michael Achimogo is the Director of Public Affairs at the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. He joins us for a frank conversation on this development. Mr. Achimogo, thank you for talking to us. Let's begin with what the public really hasn't heard yet. What did the CCTV logs and internal reports reveal that warranted a 6-month no-fly sanction on KWAM and the suspension of the pilot's licenses?
Good evening to you and to our viewers. Let me quickly, update some of the information that's out there. First off, it is not the NCAA that is placing the passenger on a no-fly list. The NCAA has issued an advisory to airline operators of Nigeria not to board or fly the passenger until investigations have been concluded into this matter. It is no longer a 6-month issue. It is until whenever investigations into this matter have been concluded. There is no certain date for that, but investigations are ongoing. Secondly, I wish to inform you that the NCA has today officially petitioned the Attorney General of the Federation and the Inspector General of Police to conduct a thorough investigation and prosecute KWAM, who was the passenger on that flight. The pilot, of course, as you know, has had her license suspended as well. Many truths can coexist, and the authority is looking to be fair and just in ensuring that everybody who was culpable in this embarrassing incident is brought to book.
It is indeed embarrassing. The Minister of Aviation was blunt in his assessment, calling it a dangerous breach that could have ended in tragedy. But talk to us about how a passenger even got onto the tarmac in the first place. Who granted him access into a restricted zone? Because we're hearing that the NCAA and fan officials were with him at that point.
Yeah. Passed through the scanner successfully, and he made use of the VIP lounge, which is normal. And preliminary investigations claim that it was at the VIP lounge that he got water. Right now, if you are going to board your flight from the VIP lounge, you still have one more check to pass. Check conducted by the pathfinders before you board the plane. It was at that point that the liquid was discovered, and he was told that he would not be able to board with that liquid and to stand aside. The allegation is that, having been asked to stand aside, he refused and began to walk towards the aircraft. Of course, maybe the security personnel did not want to be seen as violent and thought they could just walk with him and handle the issue until they got to the foot of the aircraft. After which the pilot was asked to come outside and assess the situation. While that was going on, in trying to prove that what he was carrying was harmless, he splashed water, and somehow some of it splashed on the pilot, who got angry, got back into the aircraft, and shut the door of the plane.
So we now know that the liquid is water because, there are conversations as to what exactly he was carrying. The NCCA, in a statement released earlier, did say that there are...
I am telling you, I have just told you what preliminary investigations have revealed. It's an ongoing investigation. And until it is concluded, we cannot say what the facts are.
I hear you clearly. In your earlier statement, the NCCA did say there are no untouchables in the Nigerian airspace. But, critics argue that if this wasn't a public figure linked to power, the sanctions might have been harsher or faster. I mean, what happened could be regarded as forcible intrusion, or what the Minister of Aviation called hostage taking, which under ICAO-aligned definitions of unlawful interference speaks to a major breach. How come such intruder wasn't arrested at first instance? You said they were persuading him, perhaps he was going to align to reason. But at the point where he was obstructing what appeared a moving plane, do you agree that KWAM 1 enjoyed some undue preferential treatment at that particular point?
Well, pathfinders are not airport security in that sense. FAN AFSEC exists for a reason. Would have been their responsibility to make such an arrest. But they are not present where the pathfinders were conducting that search at that moment. So I don't know about privilege. You see, look, there's a history of unruly passenger behavior in Nigeria, even from passengers of lesser status. Please pardon for want of a better word. Nobody has been treated any differently. The law is the law. The NCAA on its own does not exactly have the power to prosecute in these instances. And so what we can do, the highest we can do in this instance is what we have done today by petitioning the Attorney General and the Inspector General of Police to conduct, investigations and prosecute the passenger. If he was sacred, then we would not have written that petition.
I hear you, but I'm just echoing what even the aviation minister had said. He had questioned why NCCA initially acted against only the pilots and not the celebrity. In fact, he said what applies to the goose must apply to the gander, right? So has ValueJet, but let's talk about what has happened thereafter. Has ValueJet been questioned or sanctioned in any way? What role did their ground staff play in letting things spiral out of control?
Well, the pilot was a ValueJet pilot and immediately had a license suspended along with that of the co-pilot. The CAA has acted based on the evidence available to it part time, and that's why the investigation is called ongoing. The first piece of evidence that came to the authorities' notice was the video. And even, in fact, the angle of that video did not show an unruly passenger at the time, on the first day. And that was why the press release issued by the authority addressed because you see, if anything had happened to this passenger from the video that we had seen on the first day, nobody would be speaking about how unruly the passenger had been. So based on that video, the right thing, it is standard protocol all over the world. If such an incident has occurred, that pilot is going to be stopped from flying pending investigations. And then as the investigations continue, questions are getting asked, more evidence is coming in. Now there are different angles of videos that were made by eyewitnesses. And then we can see afterwards that the passenger was actually unruly and was blocking the plane. Based on that new information is why we have now petitioned, because there's zero tolerance for such behavior anywhere in the world. If this passenger was at the Dubai International Airport, for instance, and he's been told you cannot take this water on board, would he have acted this way? The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, submits himself to safety protocols at the airport. The Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development submits himself to every security check at the airport. No Nigerian is bigger than the law. Those protocols are made for our own safety, the safety of every passenger. And it's quite disappointing to see a senior citizen of the country, act in such a manner. But, well, the police and the Attorney General will now handle the issue.
Well, Nigerians expect that this particular incident would trigger a revision of safety protocol enforcement, especially around high-profile individuals and airline crew accountability, and that NCAA will also pick some lessons to enforce going forward. But finally, before we let you go, you mentioned that KWAM 1 has now been placed on no-flight till pending when this investigation is over. But when exactly does the public expect to get the final investigation report, and how will your agency ensure that this case doesn't quietly go away like many others?
Well, the Honorable Minister himself has gotten involved. There's no quietly going away in the matter. The investigations, the results of it will be published once the investigations have been concluded. You see, in aviation, no case is as simple as it is. You know, people tend to oversimplify these things. Take accident investigation, for instance. Even abroad, it will always take years. Now, this is not that kind of case, but we expect these investigations to be concluded as soon as possible. It's not my place to preempt the investigations, but it will not be swept under the carpet, which is why we've taken it to the highest possible legal authorities in Nigeria.
Michael Achimogo is Director of Public Affairs at the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Well, from breaches on the tarmac to crisis on the farmland, as regulators crack down on aviation misconduct, farmers across Nigeria are also crying out for urgent government intervention to survive the food crisis. That's our talking point after this break. Stay with us.